All right, thank you very much. So I'm going to be talking today about what you need to do to secure your devices against nation-state actors. So the first question you might have is, who really cares about hacking my devices, right? Who's going to bother to take the time? Well, if you look at the automotive industry, in the beginning, academics were like, hey, this looks like a fun thing for us to try to poke at. And, we did some of this work and wrote some papers, not myself personally, but actually a professor at NYU and a bunch of professors at Washington and UCSD. And then after this, we had the kind of the tracksuit crowd, like the DEF CON or black hat hackers who like to kind of show off and do flashy things and get more popular press coverage and be a little more reckless. And today, it's really nation-state actors that are really interested and really effectively able to do this. So these things, what often happens is academics will often show it's possible. Then we'll have kind of the black hat DEF hat con crowd, and then you get nation-state actors, which is what you really need to be worrying about because you all are building things that are supposed to last for long periods of time. So now let's go back. Who cares about hacking my devices? Well, let's look at a couple different domains here. So first of all, who cares about hacking medical devices? Okay. So there have been lots of major nation-state attacks and ransomware targets that deal with hospitals and medical devices. We saw the NotPetya attack, which was allegedly Russia going after Ukraine infrastructure and that spilling over and causing massive damage across hospitals, primarily in Britain, but around the world. There tend to be somewhat fewer academic hackers than we've seen with things like cars. But I think the reason why is that these are expensive devices and most people don't just have them at hand. I was invited to go to a summit where medical device companies had brought their devices and let us try to break around and see if we could break into them with the requirement that we not disclose anything about who the companies were or what devices or any of that. But I can say that I am not like a hacker guy. I'm not one I build defensive systems. That's what I do. And I was able to break into a system like no problem in 10 minutes, had a root shell and had it displaying messages on the display of the device, like telling them the Bitcoin wallet to transfer things to in about an hour. Okay. So, and this was a device you did not want to have this happen on. Okay. As you can imagine for most medical devices. So these are actually quite scary. And hospitals have a whole bunch of things that makes it very difficult to secure them. They're very open. Lots of people get to come in and connect to their networks. And it's really difficult to know who to work with because there's 70,000 or so device makers and 70,000 or so hospitals buying things. So it's hard to secure things in this domain. Now, we're looking at consumer IoT. I think everybody's seen the news about this and seen over and over and over again how, in fact, when you look at some of the large botnet attacks, these have been from a bunch of unsecured home cameras. You can also go on certain sites and you can actually view people's cameras. There are hackers who have collected feeds of random people's cameras they've left in their home and curated those feeds, which is super creepy. So there's a lot of really bad things you can do with this, and they're increasingly being used for espionage. And this is a hard domain to secure because it's difficult to know who to work with, and these get abandoned very quickly. Now, who cares about hacking transportation, like the trains and things like this? Well, random hackers are actually very effective at this. There's, an example of a 14-year-old boy in Poland who took control of the train system in his city and was causing derailments and injuries and things like that. And if a 14-year-old boy can do it, then a lot of people can do these kinds of things. So you should be fairly concerned about this. And nation-state actors would like to carry out these types of attacks because of the potential loss of life and the potential press this would get. But it's not something that you necessarily want to go and carry out as soon as you're aware of a vulnerability. You might want to stockpile them and wait for a moment when your country is particularly vulnerable to launch this, because this is certainly going to react in a very extreme response. And these are extremely long-lived devices. I know in New York City we have trains out there that are 80 years old, maybe something like that, still running in some cases. And so the updates and security support can be limited. And as you walk around, you often may see places you can plug in or jack in that could be sensitive as well. So now that we've talked some about why I think everyone in this room who works on these types of devices, or if I didn't exactly meet your area, you can probably project into it, should be concerned. Now let's think about just a device that you all probably have with you. You know, most of you have a laptop with you. Suppose you have one. Which one of these options should give you the best security overall? Using antivirus, a firewall, using some TPM, trusted boot, verified software thing, or installing the latest OS updates. So just take a second to think about it. Okay? All right. So survey of experts says the answer is absolutely updating your software. Number one, no doubt, most important thing you can do on a computer system. And the reason is that old software is vulnerable software. When you look at things like when changes are done to the Linux kernel or when changes are done to any moderately complex piece of software, even many changes that look benign are actually extremely security critical changes. Okay, so it is important to apply your updates. Old software is vulnerable software. So TPM, secure boot, etc. don't tell you that software is current. They just tell you that at some point in time, this was an okay thing to run. So it is really important to have updates. Updates are key. And I will say, to quickly go through some of the other answers, firewalls are good. You should use firewalls. They're important to segment networks and separate things out, but they're certainly not the most important thing to use in most environments, in most scenarios. And antivirus, if you're running Windows on your laptop, then you should, Microsoft provides you with very nice antivirus software. If you're paying for antivirus, you're probably being ripped off.